Governor Newsom just released his May revision of the budget proposal that he revealed in January. And there's been a lot of uncertainty this year as to the depth of the deficit. We have the governor initially telling us it was somewhere closer to 38 billion. The LAO, Legislative Analyst Office, was countering. Based on their projections, it was approximately 73 billion. So there's been a lot of unknowns in terms of what the gap is between our spending and our revenues. And with the governor's revised budget, he's now saying that we're facing about a $27.6 billion deficit. But this is after subtracting $17.3 billion in an early action budget plan that was signed into law by the governor on April 15th. So if we combine these two numbers, we're closer to about $45 billion. And the Epoch Times, we asked Mr. Newsom about this discrepancy in the Department of Finance's forecast and the LAO's forecast. And he explained that the delta as essentially being a difference of opinions in terms of revenue, and then also Prop 8 funding, which is just some school-based funding. It's a really complex formula or calculation that takes place. And if you combine the two, we're somewhere between the governor's estimate of $45 billion deficit and a $73 billion deficit. And what the governor has put on the table is a combination of spending cuts, deferrals, delays, and what critics would call accounting tricks. There's some interesting ways in which we're using funding shifts and mechanisms by which we take some costs and put them onto the next fiscal year. But what he's presented on Friday was essentially about little more than $33 billion in reductions. Now, he has shifted his strategy from recent years. He's looking at this now as a 2-year budget window. So he's looking at the 24-25 and 25-26 fiscal year. Because we have projected deficits moving forward, approximately $56 billion, according to his calculations, he's looking to close that gap with his actions this year so that ideally we can move into the next fiscal year on a more sustainable, solid foundation. There are about $19 billion in one-time spending cuts and almost $14 billion in ongoing spending cuts that have been proposed. And there's been a lot of pushback from some lobbyists and stakeholders as these budget cuts have been revealed, because there's some programs are going to be eliminated, others are going to be reduced. There's about 260 programs affected by these reductions. And some of these are core services that the governor feels are really important to his administration. So while he definitely acknowledged that he's looking to protect the primary core services to the state, we are seeing reductions in climate, housing, education, basically across the board. And one of the largest reductions is an 8% drop or cut in government operations. And while this is loosely defined in his plan, what he's looking to do is cut and streamline operations by about 8%, which could save the state billions of dollars, upwards of $5 billion, if everything goes to plan. Now, he's left this for the Department of Finance to really define how these are going to take place. Later this year, we'll discover what exactly they mean, how they're going to streamline operations. But in the meantime, he says that this can be done with no state worker furloughs and without elimination of existing jobs, though 10,000 vacant positions will not be filled. This will save about $800 million. And then from there going forward, we're seeing cuts in Department of Corrections, Department of Public Health. Basically, every agency is having to tighten their belts a little bit to figure out how to balance this budget. And there's almost no programs that were not affected. We are seeing some critics, though, pushing back on the fact that the healthcare services for illegal immigrants was left untouched. And we have some sides saying that we should be prioritizing California taxpayers, especially in a deficit year, when we're seeing billions of dollars go to illegal immigrant healthcare. There was about $100 million cut to in-house services for illegal immigrants, but the governor specifically said during his press conference on Friday that we cannot touch these healthcare benefits to illegals because he says it's foundational as to who we are as a state, and he sees this as something that can't be touched. But he did say that there are many programs that he wishes he did not have to cut, but just said that basically this is a math problem we have. And in order to be mature and to create a fiscal reality where we have a balanced budget, we're just going to have to belt them down and take these cuts and then see how we are moving forward. Several programs are eliminated. Many, many more are being reduced. And then he's also using some funding shifts He had proposed in January using about $13.1 billion in reserves. That number remains, but he has spread it across the 2 fiscal years. So we're seeing a combination of timing and reserves to help balance the budget with a goal of maintaining some of those reserves moving forward in case the deficit persists. So the education cuts, we're seeing cuts across the board from K through 12 all the way up into higher education. One of the larger cuts was $500 million to a middle-class scholarship program. So we're seeing the Student Aid Commission receiving about $1.5 billion in cuts. We're also seeing hundreds of millions of dollars in cuts for school facilities grants. And this was money that was intended to benefit kindergarten and preschool, help them upgrade or repair their facilities. So we're seeing cuts there. We're also seeing cuts to the prison systems. Approximately $80.6 million per year is what he's estimated. He's looking to cut, while at the time not closing any prisons, he's just looking to deactivate some yards across prisons across the state. He says that the savings will improve going forward and that we'll cut about 4,600 beds. He did acknowledge that he is considering closing more prisons, and the LAO actually suggested doing just such, showing that the state could save billions of dollars if more prisons were to be closed, in addition to the 4 that he's already done as governor. But he cautioned against that, saying that considering the Prop 47 measure that's on the ballot, that if we see criminal justice reforms that have taken place in the back years, if we see some shifts or amendments to those rules, that we could see more incarceration, the prison population go up. And he's slightly concerned that if we were to close prisons and then need the beds again, this could put us in a unique position. So he's really trying right now just to trim a little bit, downsize some of the existing facilities, but not close any more, while leaving the door open for closing them in the future. The homeless spending is also slightly cut, not as cut as heavy as some of the others. There are some significant cuts to what he called bonus programs, so that it was performance-based bonuses. And he said during the press conference that before any more bonuses could be paid, that he really needs to see some accountability and some successes on the ground. And he said that he understood that this could upset some of the administration, some of the people that were potentially expecting or relying on this money. But he just said that there really needs to be more accountability in the state when it comes to our homeless spending. He wants to see programs that are benefiting from the money and really showing progress to receive more, while others need to be rethought. And the homeless and housing is another area in which he mentioned that while these are not necessarily cuts that he wants to make, he's just been put in a tough fiscal position, and that this money just needs to come off the board at this time. The governor was adamant that there will be no new taxes. Now, this comes on the heels of such a significant deficit in which we still have a process to go through from here. So what the governor has put forth is an idea or a proposal for the legislature to consider. So there's going to be debate and some consideration moving forward about how best to address this. So in the situation we're in, we have one side saying that it's out of control spending, which has put us in this position, but the other side saying we just need more revenues. So the easiest way for the government to develop new revenues is to increase taxes. So while the governor is saying right now that he is not supporting any new taxes, it remains to be seen if his Democratic colleagues in the legislature will agree with his plan or will counter and say that, well, let's count some of these cuts, but then let's also increase our revenues through a series of taxes. There are billions of dollars in, while not technically raising taxes, he is limiting the net operating loss credit. So for companies that are making millions of dollars, there's now a cap, a $5 million cap on net operating loss. So this will result in some corporations paying more taxes, but it's not technically a tax increase. It's just a reduction in the credit. So this is a creative way to generate revenue while still at the same time being able to say you haven't raised taxes. And it remains to be seen if the legislature will also identify similar mechanisms, or they could outright just say that they want to see tax increases to help balance the budget. One of the issues, or one of the things that got us here, is our revenues significantly dropped. So last year, this current fiscal year we're in right now, we're operating under about a $311 billion budget. And the governor has proposed about $288 billion budget for this year. And it's about a 7.3% drop. And this is because of our revenues. The revenues dropped significantly following 2022. the governor points to capital gains taxes and volatility in the stock market in combination with the storms last year that pushed our tax due date from April 15th to November 16th. So had we had accurate data in 2023 in April, the legislature and the governor could have taken early action to address some of these deficits that we're seeing now. But since the data didn't come in until the winter, we're really having to work backwards. And that's also why we're seeing the governor, he's clawing back about $19.1 billion in money. This was promised in prior fiscal years, but had not yet been spent. So he's going back and returning that money to the general fund to help reduce the deficit, while at the same time looking forward into the future and saying that we're essentially those old revenues that we had that looked so large that helped give us a nearly $100 billion surplus. He said those are outside of the norm, more of an anomaly, and that what we're seeing now in terms of revenue collections are more normal. And so it's what he's expecting going forward. He has also another interesting point is that he really wants to see the state increase its reserves. And there's legal issues in terms of how much the state can keep in reserves. So he's looking for the legislature to help identify a solution so that when we have really good years, positive growth and surpluses, that we can put back some more of that money so that in the event that we have more volatility, we'll have some room to play. With the proposal now on the table, the legislature has until June 15th to pass a balanced budget, and they have to do this in order to get paid. So they have a good incentive to meet their deadline. And then the governor has until July 1st to sign their budget act into law. And they have taken an interesting approach here as well, trying to essentially tackle two issues with this trailer bill or the budget bill with some trailer language that includes issues related to the home insurance and property insurance crisis that we're seeing in California. So the governor mentioned during his press conference that in addition to this budget bill, there will be language also looking to expedite the regulatory changes that some are saying are needed to bring insurers back to the state. And the commissioner had proposed a plan that would have been in place by December. The governor is saying that we need to move faster than that. So that's why he wants to introduce this language into this bill with a 60-day review process so that in theory, if everything goes according to his plan, he could see a balanced budget, even with potential surpluses moving into this fiscal year and the next fiscal year, in addition to offering some help or some support to the insurers as well as the consumers who are right now facing significant challenges in terms of finding home insurance. Some people have been dropped. Other people are having issues. The housing market is really pinched because it's difficult and expensive to find insurance. So the budget bill is multifaceted this year, in addition to looking 2 years out. Really a lot of creative solutions that lawmakers and the governor are looking to bring support and relief to Californians.
If you haven't checked out CaliforniaInsider.com, we highly recommend you do that now because we're going to have a lot of news and videos there. And on top of what we have there right now, we are building a really big platform to cover what's happening in California so you can be informed. We're going to have more shows, more videos from all aspects of life in California. Go to CaliforniaInsider.com and we'll see you there.